Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. Today is Wednesday, July 9th, 2025, and this is show number 1053. Well, did you hear that? It's Wednesday. That means there is no live show this Sunday because we'll be at MacStock in Chicago all weekend. Now, a lot of people are helping me enjoy life even more while still keeping up with the cadence of the show. This week, Sandy Foster, Brian Hoffman, and George from Tulsa all pitch in to help. Because of them, I was able to relax over the 4th of July weekend, including getting to boogie board with my grandson in the ocean, dive for mermaids in the pool with my granddaughters, dig in the sand with another grandson, and giggle at the silliness of the youngest grandson running into the ocean. This is precious time, and it's all thanks to them. Now, don't worry, you'll hear from me too. I will be chiming in at the very end with the great tech story. You know I love being on Clockwise, so when Dan Morin contacted me on Mastodon late last night asking me if I could step in because somebody wasn't able to make it, you know I jumped at the chance. I sent him a Mighty Mouse gif of Mighty Mouse saying, "Here I come to save the day." Anyway, in this episode, with co-host Micah Sargent and Emojipedia founder Jeremy Burge, our 4 topics were Apple's beta season commences and what we're looking forward to, Jack Dorsey's new local chat app, BitChat, that runs over a Bluetooth mesh, what wakes us up in the morning, and do we have security cameras? Guess whose question this was? Anyway, I had a great deal of fun, and you can find the link in the show notes to Clockwise number 613.
Hi, I'm Sandy Foster. A couple of years ago, I reviewed the Tech Zebra 3-in-1 foldable wireless charger and liked it. However, one of our grandsons is a firefighter and needed a solution for his devices while at work. So I gave him this one. He needed it far more frequently than I did. Still, the day arrived when I again needed something to charge my iPhone, watch, and AirPods Pro while traveling. Enter the Anker MagGo wireless charging station, which I found several months ago at a good discount. This charges all of the devices I wanted it to charge. I tend to charge my iPad separately from the others, and I was impressed by how sturdy it is. It's a bit heavier than I recall the previous device being, but that simply adds to its stability. There's no chance that it's going to collapse or fall over while in use. Folded up for travel, the charging station measures about 1 inch deep, 3.5 inches long, and 2 5/16 inches wide. It weighs 6.9 ounces, which is somewhat heavier than my previous device, but it also ensures that it won't move unexpectedly or fall over, as one charger I'd tried did on a regular basis. The phone charger portion can lie flat, which makes the charger for the AirPods inaccessible, but it also unfolds to be almost completely upright and to give access to the charging pad for the AirPods. The Apple Watch puck is actually under the device when not in use and swings up for charging, making the whole thing very compact. The MagGo ships with a USB-C cable and a wall plug, which also uses the USB-C cable. I used it plugged into an extension cord so I could place everything near my bed, since I use the iPhone as a clock at night. As I write this, the MagGo is priced at $110. But Anker currently has an automatic code to bring it down by $27. Amazon has it for slightly less, so shopping around would be a good idea.
Well, I did shop around, Sandy, and I ended up buying the Anker MagGo on your recommendation, so thanks so much for that. This is going to make a great travel charger for me.
Astrophotography by stealth, from looking up at the night sky to hanging a picture on the wall, which takes your breath away. Hello and welcome back. I'm Brian Hoffman, and if you've been following along, you know I was to the point where I had just started the editing process with more than preview. I'd stacked my Andromeda and Orion pictures with great success. Now it was time to level up and learn how to edit my stacked pictures so I could finally hang 1 or 2 of them on the wall with a bit of pride and wonder. Part 4, Edit or Bust. If you've been following along with my progress and figured out it's been a few years of effort to get me to this point, you're right. Now, in less than 2 months, I'm starting to learn how to edit my pictures. I know I'll be a noob for a very long time. I also have a very large bucket of respect for those who have mastered these skills. As you know, I'd stacked my Andromeda and Orion light frames. I sent them to Amos for his critique. He was very happy with my progress. That was all I needed to know to motivate me. I got back to work as time was available. I travel for a living, so I needed to download all the tools and additional files I would need to use PixInsight on the road. After 47 gigabytes of file downloads and several free add-ons, I was ready to stack the rest of my pictures and begin my astrophotography editing journey. I stacked all the pictures I had over the next several days. I had around 75 hours worth of pictures, maybe more, not including the ones from my R8. I also learned about dark frames, flat frames, and bias frames. I had none of those. How much better would my pictures be with them? I was going to find out. I got to work taking those frames to enhance my work. Light frames are what you would think of as a picture. Dark frames are used to tell software like PixInsight what your sensor sees when there is no light. Flat frames are pictures your sensor sees when you shine white light at your sensor. And bias frames are a bit more technical, but they tell software about sensitivity and, of course, bias. Some of the stacks were really nice. Others needed more data before I was going to have the basis for editing a great picture. As you know, astrophotography teaches us patience. Some of my objects only filled 2% of the sensor area. I would need a lot more data to produce stacks I could work with. This endeavor could take years to produce the picture I wanted. In astrophotography, distance is measured in light years, not miles, and angles in degrees, arc minutes, and arc seconds. An object which is closer will be seen as larger, and fill more arc minutes than the same size object much further away. When you start talking about millions of light years away, even large items in the universe like galaxies get relatively small. Astrophotography takes you to a whole other level of understanding size, distance, and time. Before I started editing my photos, I looked at what was rejected by PixInsight. It was amazing how much stuff flies through the frame during each shot. This picture contains the rejections from my M104 stack. It contains satellite trails and at least one aircraft passing by. I was now ready to take the stacks and start editing. The easy way to edit my stacks was to watch a video and mimic what they do. Brian see, Brian do. This will take you to the next step. But would I understand the what's and whys? Well, the answer is sort of for now. My learning curve has been steep. While I do understand what's going on, I'm still unsure what step will produce the desired output. So I'm both watching and using trial by error. I suspect I will soon learn the process steps for the output I want. But for now, I'm a student and I'm soldering on. Of course, editing Andromeda was first. I'd stacked the pictures I had taken, and now I needed to learn the editing steps needed to get the results I was looking for. All without turning my picture into something it wasn't, which was my biggest fear. The first thing you need to know is stretching. Stretching is nothing more than enhancing the light levels to something you can see and appreciate. I think of it like, if I traveled much closer to the object, what would I see? I'd be able to see more light. That to me is stretching. The next thing you have to do, if you're using a color sensor, is correct for the different photoreceptors in your camera. The red, the blue, and the green receptors can all see green, so your total green has to be reduced or you'll just have a green screen with some details embedded. After you correct the color values, you're going to process the new picture. You're going to reduce the blur and the noise, and you're going to correct the colors of the objects. Then you're going to enhance some of the items in the picture to better represent what you saw. This part is no different from processing any picture. You need a little enhancement here or a little reduction there? No problem. In the end, you get a picture you can be proud of. And maybe, just maybe, hang on the wall. But your learning won't stop there. You see, the software and the equipment is always getting better. If you really want the best picture you can take, it's going to take a lifetime of effort. But for now, here's where I am in the journey. In the future, I'll be able to make my pictures even better. However, it all comes at a cost. I can buy a monochrome camera with a full-frame sensor, which will capture more precise light, and using a filter wheel, I can bring the colors back to the picture. Monochrome cameras have every pixel set up to capture the light which hits it. It's a yes-no question. However, in an RGB color camera, only 1 in 3 pixels is set up for each color. Monochrome cameras will give you more optical resolution, and with more time, the colors can return. Stack sensors are another technology which will revolutionize astrophotography. These sensors have all 3 color sensors stacked layer upon layer So as a photon hits the sensor, each color can be processed, giving you higher resolution and color all at once. Filters are another technology which helps select the light you're trying to capture. In light-polluted cities, filters are a must. If you have a dark skies location to capture from, filters become a choice. Other techniques like dithering and drizzling are way beyond the scope of this post. And to be completely honest, I don't completely understand them. And while I do dither between each shot, I don't really see much of a benefit so far. But I bet I will in the future. For now, I have the data. As I use PixInsight, I'm starting to understand why other add-on software is available. There is so much you can do to enhance your data and increase your resolution simply by using software. I suspect as I get better, I too will pay for these enhancements. One thing you can do to enhance your pictures is to go to a high-altitude dark skies location to capture your light frames. I like being in a dark skies location above 6,000 feet where a large portion of the atmosphere is below you and your light collected will have less light pollution to work against. Dark sky locations are available around the world. Going to one of these places on the new moon is likely going to have you finding others who are trying to capture their own wall-hanging picture, which will take their breath away. Here's one last picture I'll leave you with for now. This is a stack of 178 pictures of M106, and in the vein of Where's Waldo, I'll ask you how many galaxies can you find in this picture. Taking a casual look, you can usually find 6 or 7 galaxies. If you take your time and enlarge the picture and take a good look, how many galaxies can you find? Add your guesses to the comments. Hint, I found way more than I expected. One of the reasons I'm able to capture so many galaxies in this picture is because of where in the night sky M106 can be found. Looking up at the Big Dipper where the ladle would pour out, M106 is located right there. What this means is there's less Milky Way dust to look through to see M106 and its neighbors. One other thing I need to let you guys in on is I have an older 8-inch, 2,000 millimeter reflecting telescope, which may be adaptable to astrophotography. I would capture way more light in every shot, but that project's for another day. However, I know my first target when it's ready to capture light. What I do know is I'll be learning a lot more about astrophotography by stealth to gain the needed skills to take that wall-hanging picture, which takes my breath away. Finally, here's a bonus picture from our vacation to Bryce Canyon a few weeks ago. It's not fully edited, but it does accurately represent the night sky as I saw it, and it shows some of the flaws an uncooled camera will capture. The contrast to the cooled sensor is amazing. It has been my distinct pleasure chronicling my adventures into the early days of my photography rebirth. I have not sought any one skill. As the need arose, learning occurred, and I can now say I'm on my way to a journey which will last the rest of my life. I hope to stop by again when invited, so I can share some of the successes and frustrations as I continue to level up and seek that next wall-hangable picture which will take your breath away.
Well, to Brian, thank you so much for this 4-part series. This has been really, really interesting. I'm probably not in a position to consider spending as much money as you did, but I've really enjoyed following along with all of the steps you've gone on the way. And to the listeners, you absolutely must go to the link in the show notes to his article because the second to last image is, he calls it M106 and Friends. And it's a picture of all of these galaxies. It is crazy the amount of detail that's in it. And I have a note that says click to embiggen, and you have to do that because you can zoom in and zoom in and zoom in on this extended image if you click first. So you've got to go check out M106 and Friends. And again, thank you to Brian Hoffman for bringing us this really cool series.
Hi, I'm George from Tulsa, here today so Allison and Steve can have more time to prep for and party at MacStock, kicking off Friday, July 11th in Crystal Lake, Illinois, 40 miles from Chicago. If you're able to travel or live in the Chicago area, check the MacStock website in today's show notes because registration seems to still be open. I don't spend a lot of time on YouTube, but a few months ago, I started watching car videos. All the time reminding myself that the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid I reported about buying in July 2017's show number 638 has an embarrassingly low odometer reading and is in perfect condition. YouTube, being YouTube, started flooding me with car videos, including many shot at the April 2025 Shanghai Auto Show. China has gone all in on electric cars, so much so that YouTuber Kim Java made a special point of touring the streets of Shanghai to show how quiet they are, thanks to electric cars and buses. Her video, that I link in the show notes, is worth watching just for that bit, but also for her brief survey of the amazing variety of Chinese EVs on offer at the show. Electric cars seem like a new thing, but they're definitely not. My paternal great-grandmother owned a Baker Electric in the early years of the 20th century. In 1899, a fleet of 100 electric taxis cruised the streets of Manhattan. When their batteries ran low, they pulled into a battery exchange station on Broadway to have their 1,300-pound lead-acid battery packs switched out in 3 minutes. In the last years of the 19th century and first of the 20th, most of the cars made were electrics and steamers. Starting a gasoline engine required difficult and dangerous manual cranking, where electrics started with the turn of a key, and steamers by lighting a pilot light under the boiler and waiting for the pressure to rise. Thomas Edison was deeply committed to the electric car. He saw the opportunity to sell charging services from his New York DC generation company. He invented the first home charging station and installed it in the garage of his New Jersey estate. He bought a Baker Electric to use in testing a new kind of wet cell nickel iron battery he invented to replace heavier lead acids. Edison had some success. His Edison battery increased the range of Baker's and similar cars from 50 to 110 miles at their maximum 20 to 25 miles an hour. His battery remains something of a marvel. It doesn't wear out, isn't toxic, is resistant to overcharging, and can be refreshed simply by rinsing out with water and replacing its electrolyte. Some of the original batteries his company produced were still functioning more than 100 years after first use. New versions with some improvements are now sold as long-term storage for solar and wind-generated power. But even though they're lighter than lead acid and better at holding and delivering a charge, Edison's batteries are simply too heavy and produce far too little power per pound to be useful in a modern car. In 1912, Cadillac unveiled the electric self-starter. The death of a man who was struck in the head with the crank while manually starting a stalled Cadillac led to the self-starter's invention, immediately erasing the ease of starting advantage both electrics and steamers had over gas cars. Had the self-starter not been invented, perhaps Edison and others would have continued improving electrics. But as Ford and later General Motors were cranking out cheap gas cars by the millions and lowering prices every year, there just wasn't any market for expensive electrics offering less performance and range. Gasoline delivers 488 times as much power per kilogram as a lead-acid battery, and 81.3 times as much as modern nickel, cobalt, manganese, lithium-ion. A large part of the energy from burning gasoline is lost to inefficiency, but even so, the best gasoline engine delivers 26 times the motive power as the best electric vehicle battery. It's difficult to show that in real life, but I'll try here by referencing the 2025 Mini Countryman four-wheel drive, a car that's unusually available as either an EV or a gas-powered car. The gasoline version weighs 3,777 pounds. Its 14.3-gallon tank provides a range of 386 miles at 27 miles per gallon combined. The EV at 4,588 pounds is 811 pounds heavier. It's 65.7 kilowatt hour nickel, cobalt, manganese, lithium ion battery, the lightest and most power dense currently available, provides only 200 miles of range, possibly because it's pushing 811 extra pounds down the road. Is there a different type of EV battery on the horizon that could improve the Countryman's range? Well, not likely, as its current NCM lithium ion is the most energy dense available. New battery tech is more about reducing cost and increasing charging speed and safety than adding energy density. Many EVs are now being manufactured using lithium iron phosphate batteries. LFP batteries aren't as power dense as NMCs, so at the same weight, they'll deliver less range. However, they're non-combustible and can sustain as many as 5 times the charge cycles. Chinese battery manufacturers have improved the energy density of LFP batteries, but more importantly, they're focused on compensating for shorter range by taking advantage of their ability to charge faster and cooler. Where LFP batteries won't burn, NMCs are filled with a combustible liquid electrolyte, which provides its own oxidizer and is all but impossible to extinguish. In 2021, a lithium-ion battery that entered Tulsa's recycling flow caught fire at and destroyed the Mr. Murph Processing Center, causing $7 million of damage. Mr. Murph was offline for a year, and all Tulsa area recyclables went to the trash-to-energy plant. You'll find a link in the show notes to a video that's humorous only because no dogs or people were hurt. It's from a security camera that captured a dog in Tulsa treating a lithium-ion battery pack as a chew toy and sparking a fire that ignited its home. So what's new? There's a lot of talk about solid state, and in batteries, that doesn't mean transistors, but dry or gel electrolytes that reduce the danger of NMC's liquid. A couple of companies have announced trial production, but don't expect commercialization soon. Chinese company CATL recently announced it has put a sodium-ion battery into production, completely replacing expensive and rare lithium with common salt. CATL claims the sodium battery is about as energy dense as LFP, can hold up to 10,000 charging cycles, and functions well at -40 Celsius. BYD, the largest electric car company in the world, has announced megawatt charging, delivering 1,000 kilowatts of power at 1,000 volts, which can add 250 miles of range to a compatible car in just 5 minutes. Finally, in a Back to the Future moment, recalling those 1899 NYC taxis, Chinese EV manufacturer NIO is pushing robotic battery swapping stations that enable car owners to buy cars without batteries, then subscribe to batteries as a service, even upgrading temporarily to larger batteries for a road trip. Sadly, there's no sign that tech may reach the US. The opposite seems to be happening as Tesla has started making its battery packs a structural part of its vehicles. That's affirmation of how reliable and durable EV batteries are, but no consolation to those owners who have problems after warranties expire or whose cars are in wrecks bad enough to damage the battery. Canadian driver Kyle reported through the Motormouth YouTube channel that some road debris scratched but apparently didn't structurally damage the NMC lithium-ion polymer battery pack of his Ioniq 5, and his insurance company totaled the car because Hyundai wanted an extortion amount for a replacement battery, and his carrier surely didn't want to take the risk the battery pack in his car would replay Mr. Murph's expensive demise. So, thanks for listening if you made it this far. That's a wrap for what I've learned about EV battery tech in mid-2025. But it's changing fast and mostly in China. I just wish it were easier to sift out the hyperbole, to know what's good and what's too good to be true.
Thanks, George. That was awesome. I sure got a lot better understanding of a lot of the different battery technologies that are out there. And if people are interested in even more information, very much like this, you should check out Bodie Grimm's Kilowatt podcast, because this is the kind of thing he loves to talk about. This week, we have two huge heroes. Okay, they're not huge, but their financial contributions to support the show are huge. They both used PayPal to make their donations. After I thanked Kenneth Kleinman for his generous donation, he made me even happier by writing back, "Glad to contribute. Your efforts for the tech community are grand. I get enjoyment and education listening to your podcast. Big shout out for chapter marking. There are segments that I'm just not interested in. Being able to skip them adds a lot to my listening." I love that, because I remember wondering if it would make me sad when I went to all the effort to add chapter marks and then people would skip content. Instead, I'm happy because it adds value to him to be able to skip the segments he doesn't care about, and it keeps him listening. That's kind of counterintuitive, but it makes perfect sense. The second hero is Philip from Australia, who made a bananas generous donation. After complaining about how bad the exchange rate is right now, as though he had to apologize for that, he said, "I still enjoy the show. I wish I could do MacStock." Well, I sure wish you could too, Philip. We did get to meet in person, 150 years ago? But hopefully we'll meet again someday. If you'd like to be a hero like Kenneth and Philip, head on over to podfeet.com/PayPal to make a donation to help support the show. While I'm a big proponent of electric vehicles to help save the planet, one of the best things you could do is to continue to drive your current car. The environmental impact of having a new car created for you is actually pretty high. If you've got an older car, but you crave the cool gadgets in the newer cars, I may have an idea for you. Lindsay, the daughter, drives a 2014 Subaru Outback. It doesn't have a lot of miles on it, and she loves her car, so she plans on driving it for a very long time. But she has one big problem with it. She used to have an iPhone 14 Pro, which worked great with Bluetooth in her car. But when I gave her my iPhone 15 Pro, she ran into a very odd problem. When she made regular garden variety phone calls with it over Bluetooth in her car, her voice was garbled beyond recognition. She discovered that she could make data calls, such as FaceTime audio, and then the audio was just fine. This wasn't an ideal situation, but she lived with it. But then the side button on the iPhone 15 Pro got mushy and unresponsive. It was under AppleCare, so she sent it in for a repair. And that's when things got even worse. The refurbished iPhone 15 Pro she got back doesn't work with Bluetooth in her car at all. The interface on the Outback for Bluetooth pairing is simply dreadful. You have to do everything through voice. She went through the agonizing steps repeatedly, and the new iPhone 15 Pro would never pair with her car. Since then, she's been living with using speakerphone for a few months, and it's getting pretty old. As I thought about ways to help fix this problem, I wondered whether a good solution would be to replace the entire head unit with a CarPlay system. This would bring her car up to modern days, and I'm sure it would delight her. I started doing some research and found that head units aren't all that expensive. Crutchfield sells a Sony model for $350 that would fit in her car, and it looked really nice with a 7-inch screen. But there's a catch. This is open-heart surgery you need to perform to remove the old radio and connect the new head unit. I just assumed Steve would delight in spending his 4th of July weekend doing this while I played with our grandchildren in the pool. Oddly, he was less excited about this idea than I expected. The other catch is that for the $350 price, when installed, the new head unit wouldn't be connected to anything in the car, like controlling the audio from the steering wheel. Crutchfield suggested that I add a $244 cable harness from a company called iDataLink to make it fully compatible. While $350 is a fair bit of money, when you're talking $600 plus tax, it just doesn't make sense for an 11-year-old car. Also, don't forget Steve's enthusiasm level for this project. And then I had another idea. I'd heard that it was possible to connect a simple screen to your existing system that would provide the CarPlay experience. I asked ChatGPT to help me find some options, and what it gave me was just dreadful. One had 1.5 stars on Amazon, and all of them mounted on top of the dash where the screen would obstruct Lindsay's line of vision. I'm kind of funny, but I'm a fan of being able to have greater visibility while driving, not less. And then I found the LAMTTO wireless CarPlay screen for $40, on sale from Amazon, down from $80. The LAMTTO screen does not mount on top of the dash. Its 7-inch screen comes with 2 possible mounts. It has a vent mount included and a suction cup mount. Now, Lindsay's Subaru has 2 very small vents on either side of the radio, and she lives where it gets super hot in the summer, so the last thing she'd want would be something 7-inch diagonally blocking one of her air vents. The suction cup mount that comes with the LAMTTO screen is an interesting idea, but I was a little worried that with high temperatures in her area, the suction cup would fall right off in the first heat wave. Might also look pretty janky if we tried to, suction cup it to the little display on her original radio. I kept searching for solutions, and I found the perfect product. A company called Course Motorsports creates vehicle-specific mounts for just this purpose. I chose the direct fit mount Subaru Outback Legacy 2010 to 2014. I'll explain how cleverly it connects to the car in a moment. Before you purchase, though, you get to decide what mounting head to buy. You can choose a plain magnetic head, or a cradle head that would clamp the sides of a phone, or you can ask for a MagSafe head that also supports wireless charging. Since the LAMTTO screen supports magnetic mounting, from Course Motorsports, I chose the plain magnetic head. After tax, shipping, and less a 5% welcome discount, the total cost out the door was only $56. Now, if I'd gone full MagSafe, it would have cost $90 before tax and shipping, but that didn't really make sense with this device. Now, as I mentioned, the Course Motorsports mount is tailored for your specific vehicle. The installation video explained that the faceplate of Lindsay's car stereo just pops off with a little bit of spudger work. Under that, there's a mounting screw on the right side of the radio. You loosen that screw, and then slide the bracket of the phone mount under the screw head, and then retighten the screw. The mount has a metal bracket that's bent to hug the side of her specific radio, so that when you put the faceplate back on, you only see this little ball head mount sticking out. To the ball head mount, you add whichever head you purchased, in our case, the magnetic head. I had a couple of questions about the mount, and customer service at Course Motorsports got back to me within an hour or two each time with a very clear answer. I hope I need more things from this company because so far, it's been a great experience. When the CarPlay screen arrived at our house a week before we'd be seeing Lindsay, we could not resist the temptation to open it up and play with it. The screen is very bright, very crisp, and has a touchscreen that is really responsive, surprisingly so for, this price. It supports wireless CarPlay over Wi-Fi after an initial handshake with Bluetooth. On top of that, it was super easy to set up. The LAMTTO screen comes with a USB-C to 12-volt, cigarette lighter adapter to power the device. But you can also power it with USB-C directly to the car's USB-A if you have that, or I guess even USB-C. We plugged the screen into power at home, and it came on asking what language we preferred. Next, it came up with a screen showing many options. It has a play-pause section, then buttons for CarPlay, Android Auto, AirPlay, SuperLink, audio output, and settings. Tapping on CarPlay brought up the Bluetooth handshake screen. You've seen these instructions before, where you open Bluetooth on your phone, you look for the new device, you tap connect, and verify that the number you see on screen is the same as on the other screen. Oddly, no number shows on the LAMTTO screen, but the device name and Bluetooth was the correct one, so it was pretty easy to tell it was working correctly. When you select pair, it asks you if you want to sync your contacts and favorites, which I declined. I saw no reason to give this device that information since it would be controlled in the end by my phone through CarPlay. I have no specific reason to distrust this company, but it's kind of a made-up brand name of a Chinese supplier, so why take a chance? Right after that, you get a pop-up in Bluetooth on the phone that says, Connect to CarPlay with the familiar green button. And then, in another split second, the LAMTTO screen is showing CarPlay. It is magical. By default, the screen is in portrait mode with the familiar grid of CarPlay-appropriate apps. I was kind of surprised to see Apple News, but that showed me audio news stories alone, and Libby, which gives you audiobooks from the public library, Target, that only shows you the screen that you select when telling them you're there to pick up an order, and Zoom, only for audio calls. On the screen, you'll also see the assistive touch button. Now, that seemed like a kind of a strange thing to see. On iPhone, you turn this on in Accessibility Touch, and that gives you access to various commands like Siri, notifications, and it also acts as a home button. This was an especially useful tip when the home button used to break on the older phones. On the LAMTTO screen, the assistive touch button is there to give you quick access to controls for brightness and volume of the display, along with a home button that takes you back to the built-in interface of the display that we saw back at the very beginning. In portrait mode, I can see Apple Maps in the top 2/3 with the bottom third showing my podcast playing an overcast, distance to my destination in Maps, and even my HomeKit-compatible garage door opener as a dedicated button. Maps is maybe a little bit washed out, but the text for the roads is fairly high contrast, so Apple Maps is easy to read. I looked at Google Maps, though, and it's quite a bit harder to read. It was very washed out, and the text is smaller and less bold. Maybe you're used to it in your car, but I wouldn't choose it. I can't set aside the fact that some blame should probably go to the display itself for having a contrast that maybe is a bit lower than optimal. On the home screen of the device, you can toggle the screen to be in landscape mode. It does a very quick reboot, and you're in business. I have a feeling that with the relatively small 7-inch screen, it might work best in portrait mode, but it's nice that Lindsay will have those options. In addition to the USB-C port for power, the LAMTTO display includes an aux jack, also known as a 3.5mm audio connector. They include an aux cable so you can plug it right into your stereo system. Lindsay's car has an aux jack, so this will work perfectly for her, in theory. Sadly, Teslas don't have aux jacks, so we couldn't test it in our cars. Instead, we tested out the audio by plugging it into an old Jambox speaker, and it worked. Without being plugged into any kind of speaker, the internal speakers were passable. You wouldn't want to listen to music on them or probably even a podcast, but you might be able to stand to listen to a phone call on it. Speaking of phone calls, the LAMTTO has a microphone on the front of the screen. Steve said I was understandable on his end when I made a test phone call to him. He wasn't enthusiastic about the sound, but like I said, understandable. Hey, get this. You can even say, "Hey, S-Lady," and the screen gets the little animation around the edges and listens to your commands. She doesn't obey any better than she does on the phone, but she does listen. We did experience a problem when playing with the display at home. We noticed a ticking sound coming from the speaker at one point. We did a bunch of experiments like swapping out the speaker and changing out the aux cable, and eventually it just went away. We weren't quite sure what we did that made it stop. Remember this point for later. All of this fooling around with the display was great fun at home, but we still wondered if it would work in Lindsay's car. Before messing around with the mounting options, we plugged the CarPlay display into a powered USB port in her car and connected the audio cable to her aux jack. When we played some audio, we heard the same ticking we heard before. In Lindsay's car, it was pretty bad. Steve is an electrical engineer, and he pondered whether the aux cable was maybe acting like an antenna. As I moved my iPhone around the cable, it seemed to be having an effect on the intensity of the static. We also noticed that the audio was coming out of both the display and the car speakers, but if we turned down the volume on the display, the volume of the car speakers turned down too. We tested the display in Lindsay's husband Nolan's car, and we heard the same ticking. But we had another big problem in Nolan's car. The audio only came out of the left speakers. Where at home this had been kind of a soft ticking, it was terrible in both cars, and it made it unlistenable. Steve ordered a shielded aux cable to arrive same day, hoping this would fix the problem. But later we came back to Lindsay's car and started messing around with the display again, and we essentially stumbled onto the solution. You know how on a stereo you can change the input from AM to FM to CD player to Bluetooth? One of the input options is aux. As soon as we switched the input to aux, the audio came out loud and clear with no static at all. We were able to independently turn down the display's volume and turn up the stereo in the car, and it sounded fantastic. Testing it in Nolan's car, when we set it to the aux jack, the audio also came out clearly from all of the speakers. Luckily, Steve was able to cancel the order for the shielded aux cables. Now, I was very excited to use my spudgers from my iFixit toolkit to pry off the faceplate of Lindsay's car stereo to install the form-fit mount from Course Motorsports. Once you pull off the faceplate, you have literally one thing you have to do. You simply back off one screw just far enough to slide the mount's bracket under the head and then retighten the screw. But for the life of us, we could not loosen that screw. Now, I'm a big old weakling in terms of hand strength, but Steve is quite strong. He tried 3 different screwdrivers. We tried WD-40. He tried banging on the end of the screwdriver with a hammer to see if that would break it loose. He even tried hitting the sides of the screw with a flathead screwdriver, banging on that with a hammer. Finally, Nolan pulled out his impact screwdriver. I'm sure you've guessed the end of the story by now is that all of our efforts were rewarded with a stripped screw head. While Nolan does have one of those bits that lets you drill out a screw, we decided to abandon that whole path for now. We decided to try one of the other mounting options. The vent mount, as expected, wouldn't work in Lindsay's car because the vents are just too small, so we were left with the suction cup. Now, I had pictured that the suction cup would have to stick to that little screen. She's got a little 4.3-inch screen on her radio, but it actually comes with a round metal disc with adhesive on the back, and we were able to adhere that to sort of a coin tray above the radio. Once we waited the 24 hours for it to cure, we were able to put the suction cup on in a way that the arm put the display down in front of her radio. That meant it wasn't above her radio at all, and it wasn't obscuring her vision. Now, we hoped that the way the arm rested on the edge above the radio would relieve some of the tension on the suction cup so it would stay stuck. Now, the angle isn't quite ideal, but it was better than all of the other options. Because Lindsay's USB port and aux jack are under the armrest on the center console, Steve had the fun task of using some cable management thingies to neatly route the cables so they're as much out of sight as possible. I should mention at this point that I bought a second LAMTTO display for Nolan. Now, luckily for his car, the vent mount works perfectly, and his aux and USB ports are directly below the radio, so it was a much easier job to tidy up the cables. On both cars, we are happy to see that the volume controls on their steering wheels were able to control the volume of the audio from CarPlay. Siri worked great for Lindsay and Nolan to do things like ask it to provide navigation. But hold on that point. I'm afraid this entire project took a turn for the worse in real-life use. Remember when I said I worried the suction cup wouldn't work if the car got hot? Yeah, it fell off on the first day Lindsay drove to work. When it fell off, it also nicely ripped off all of the cable management thingies Steve so painstakingly arranged to make it look nice. And the ticking came back with a vengeance. No amount of fiddling with the controls for audio would make it stop. Oh, and guess what else? The screen locks up if she asks Siri to switch to Apple Music. It's fine in navigation, but when she switches to music, it locks up every single time. And wireless CarPlay introduces a huge lag when talking on the phone. I'd say it's a good second or more from when you stop talking till the other person can hear it. I did a bit of the Googles, and it seems this is a common issue with wireless CarPlay. Now, it must not be with every wireless CarPlay, though, or I would have heard everyone complaining about wireless CarPlay instead of raving about it. So it must just be with some units, and I don't know how to tell which are the good ones. I looked at the reviews on Amazon, and not one single person said lag or delay or anything like that related to phone calls. Nolan's car experiences the same phone call lag, but he doesn't actually make many phone calls in the car. I did some reading, and I think since his car's Bluetooth functions, he can also route calls directly that way if he ends up really caring about it. His LAMTTO does not make the ticking noise, nor does it lock up when he asks Siri to change applications to music. With a firm vent mount, he's happy with the device, and he's going to keep it. And we've initiated a return of Lindsay's LAMTTO CarPlay screen for all of the above reasons. I haven't given up on this idea of adding CarPlay to Lindsay's car. I was able to find a couple of screens from other manufacturers that had wired CarPlay, but so far I haven't found any that will also accept a magnetic mount. I'll probably take a risk on a different manufacturer with wireless CarPlay that works with a magnetic mount, and Nolan has agreed to drill out the screw so she can use the Course Motorsports mount. So, bottom line? I don't know. For $40, some may say that you get what you pay for. I'm sad because this seemed so promising through most of the exercise. Felt like we were really close to a great solution for Lindsay. I definitely can't endorse the LAMTTO 7-inch CarPlay display with a, 50% failure rate and significant lag in phone calls, but I'll hold out hope that there's another better solution. I am, by the way, willing to go higher than $40. Even, $100 would be a good price for this kind of solution for her. I'm just not willing to go to, $600 or $700. Stay tuned to this channel to find out if I can find a good solution or if we're forced to give up. Well, that is going to wind us up for this week. I can't thank Brian, Sandy, and George enough for helping me to get this show out early to you and let me have fun times with my grandkids. Did you know you can email me at allison@podfeed.com anytime you like? You can. People email me all the time, and I love it. If you have a question or a suggestion, just send it on over. I like people to tell me when I'm wrong. That's awesome. Remember, everything good starts with podfeed.com. You can follow me on Mastodon at podfeed.com/Mastodon. If you want to listen to the podcast on YouTube like those kids today, you can go to podfeed.com/YouTube. If you want to join the conversation, you can join our Slack community at podfeed.com/Slack. You can talk to me and all of the other lovely NosillaCastaways in there. You can support the show at podfeet.com/Patreon, or you can do a one-time donation at podfeet.com/donate, or through podfeet.com/PayPal, like Kenneth and Philip, our heroes of the week. And if you want to join in the fun of the live show, you know what? You're going to have to wait till July 20th to head on over to podfeet.com/live on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time to join the friendly and enthusiastic NosillaCastaways. I missed all of you while sitting alone in my studio doing the recording. Thanks for listening, and stay subscribed.